Okay, so in the second part of our basic percents video here, you talked about on this side how to go back and forth between fractions and decimals and percents and vice versa. So if you need to refer back to this, please do. We also did some shading, and we looked at what 100% and 50% and what those things look like. So when I'm talking about the Waynesville High School Library, it has 500 books, and 450 books were checked out this year. What percentage of the books were checked out this year? So that would be 450 books out of the 500 books. Now you notice 450 is really close to 500. So almost all of the books were checked out. So if almost all of the books were checked out, our percentage should be pretty close to 100%. So we do 450. Maybe, let's try this again. 450 divided by 500, and we get 0.9. Now, we know that it's going to give us the answer as a decimal. We're going to have to change it into a percent. And less than 1% doesn't make sense. So remember, I take that and I'm going to multiply it times 100, which means the decimal point goes 2 places. So I find out that 90% of the books were checked out. Over here we have one that's similar that says the 7th graders set a goal to collect 250 cans for the school's food drive, and they collected 275. Well, if I collected more than I wanted, that means my percent should be greater than 100%. So if I collected 275 and my goal was only 250, I've collected more than I needed. So my percent should be more than 100%. So when I do 275 divided by 250, I get 1.1. Once again, we know that's a decimal. We need to multiply that times 100. And we get 110%. So they collected 110% of their goal. They went above and beyond their goal. They collected more than 100%. Our next one here says a service club is planting seedlings as part of an erosion prevention project. And it says out of 240 newly planted seedlings, 30 are laurel sumac. What percentage of the seedlings are laurel sumac? So 30 out of 240. Well, half of 240 would be 120. We're nowhere close to half, so our percentage should be lower than 1/2. So 30 out of 240. Now, I always teach my kids about the zero buddies. So if I have a division problem or a fraction that I want to reduce, if there's a 0 in the top and a 0 at the end, there's no decimal points involved, I can cancel those zero buddies out. So this becomes 3 over 24, which means I could reduce it to 1/8, which if I have to do long division without having a calculator, that makes my life a whole lot simpler. So 1 divided by 8 is going to get me 0.125. And I want to show that again in long division. Like I can't do that, but I can do this. Goes in 1 time, add another 0, bring it down, goes in 2 times, add another 0, bring it down, goes in 5 times, and we finally get 0 there. So that's how we get that decimal. Now remember, it's a decimal. We need to multiply it times 100 to find out that that is 12. Got ahead of myself there, 12.5%. 12.5%. On this next one over here, it says Mrs. Loya sponsors the Spanish Club at Central Middle School. The club has 8 members who are 6th graders, 12 members who are 7th graders, and 10 members who are 8th graders. What percent of the Spanish club members are 7th graders? Well, the first thing I need to find is how many 7th graders are there. And it says there are 12 7th graders. And then I need to find my total. So if there's 12 7th graders, I want to know total how many kids there are. Well, there's 8 who are 6th graders, and then there are 10 who are 8th graders. So 8 plus 12 plus 10 gives me a total of, that's 20 plus 10, so it gives me a total of 30. So I'm going to divide how many there are that are 7th graders by how many there are total. So 12 divided by 30 is 0.4, and we're like, wait, we know that's a decimal. Let's multiply by 100, so we get 40%. So 40% of the Spanish Club members are 7th graders. So close to half, but not quite. Down here we've got a store, and they sold 28 boxes of juice from a case containing 48 boxes. And then it says approximately what percent of the case of juice has been sold. So 28 divided by 48, and if I look at that, I'm like, that's pretty darn close to what fraction? If I even divide these down, I get 14 over 24. I'm like, that's really close. Like, this is really close to 50. That's really close to 30. We're in between half, which we don't have over here as an option. So half would have been 24 out of 48. That would have reduced to 1/2. This is a little bit more than that. So my approximation is going to be 60% because it's more than 50. And that's my only choice that is more than 50%. On this next one, it says 35 out of 38 students take the bus to school each day. What is the best estimate for the percent of these students who take the bus to school? So 38 out of 35, 35 out of 38 students take the bus to school. This is really close to 100%, and so my only percentage that meets is 90%. The 8th grade basketball team had tryouts last week. 17 out of 20 students who tried out made the team. What percentage of students who tried out did not make the team? So if I had 20 and 17 made it, that means that 3 kids did not make it. So first I have to subtract, and then I'm going to do 3 divided by 20, which gives me 0.15, which we know is a decimal, and we are going to multiply it times 100. So we find out that 15% of the kids did not make it. Our last one here on this side, I think it's our last one altogether, says Mrs. Graff has 150 students total. If 120 students turn in their weekly review, what percent of her students did not? And be careful, because digits and the error test and much other ones, they like to sneak those little knots in there to see if you're paying attention. So once again, if 150 students total and 120 turned it in, that means that 30 students did not. So I want to know what percent is 30 out of 150. Remember, these are ratios, so you can hear that out of. Once again, I can get rid of that. I'm like, oh, 3 out of 15. If I have to do long divisions, easier. I get 0.2. But I'm like, that's the decimal. That's not the percent yet. Multiply times 100. And I find that that is 20%. Let me know if you have any problems with that. You can always look back. You can always pause and try things on your own. And let me know if